You're lying in the dark at 2 in the morning. Your daughter is finally asleep, but only on your chest, and you're afraid to move a muscle. Somewhere on your phone, a sleep app is quietly logging this as a mistake. Contact napping, it calls it. A habit to break before it turns into a crutch. Put her down. Let her learn to self-soothe. For 9% of the roughly 300,000 years Homo sapiens has existed, that instruction would have made zero sense to anyone. Today, parenting comes with schedules, sleep coaches, milestone charts, and a low hum of guilt that never fully switches off. You compare notes with other exhausted parents. You Google whether 6 months is too late to start a routine. None of that existed for most of human history, and yet, against odds far worse than yours, those children survived to raise children of their own. So how did it actually work? No cribs. No formula, no nurseries, just small mobile bands moving through dangerous landscapes with fragile, slow-growing infants strapped to them. How did any of those children make it to adulthood? Start with a tooth. In 2018, biological anthropologist Tanya Smith and her colleagues examined the molars of 2 Neanderthal children who died roughly 250,000 years ago at a site called Pear in southeastern France. Teeth grow the way trees do, in layers, one for each day of a child's life. Each layer locks in a chemical record of exactly what that child was eating. By tracking barium, an element that spikes in a nursing infant's teeth and fades once milk stops, Smith's team pinned down the exact age those children stopped breastfeeding, about 2.5 years old. That number matters. It's nearly identical to weaning patterns still seen in hunter-gatherer societies today. Neanderthals aren't even our species, but their children were fed on the same rhythm. Years, not months, of steady contact through a childhood that the same teeth showed also included freezing winters and repeated lead exposure. Toughness and tenderness, recorded in the same molar. So what did that pattern look like in our own species? In 1980, anthropologist Melvin Connor published a study in the journal Science after fieldwork with the Kungsan, hunter-gatherers of the Kalahari Desert in Botswana. With colleague Carol Worthman, he timed exactly how often Kung mothers nursed their infants. The answer, roughly every 13 minutes for about 90 seconds at a stretch, day and night. Compare that to a modern schedule built around 2 to 4 hour gaps. It isn't a small difference. It's a different relationship to a baby's body entirely. Infants weren't handed off to sleep alone either, Connor's records show. Kung babies stayed in physical contact with a caregiver, skin against skin, for more than 90% of daylight hours in early infancy. There was no crying it out. There was barely time to cry before someone responded. Everyone assumes a harsher world made for harsher, more hands-off parenting, that survival didn't leave room for coddling. The data says the opposite. The more dangerous the environment, the more constant the contact, not less. Distance was the risk. Closeness was the strategy. So what about when the mother needed a break? This is where the modern nuclear family, one mom, one dad, one set of hands, starts to look like the outlier. Primatologist Sarah Hrdy laid this out in her 2009 book Mothers and Others, drawing on fieldwork among the AKA people of the Central African rainforest. AKA infants, the research found, are cared for by an average of 14 different people beyond their mother within their first year. Fathers, grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, unrelated campmates. By 18 weeks old, aka babies were spending more time held by these other caregivers than by their own mothers. Ask a nearby Ife mother who raises the children, and the traditional answer isn't I do, it's we all do. Hrdy calls this cooperative breeding and argues it isn't a cultural nicety. It's the reason human babies, expensive, helpless, absurdly slow to grow up, survived at all. But there's a catch to that story. Everyone assumes the nuclear family, 2 parents, 1 household, minimal outside help, is the ancient natural default, and that modern life is what fractured it. It's closer to the opposite. Isolated. 2-person parenting with no daily backup is one of the newest arrangements in the entire history of the species, not the oldest. One caregiver in particular carried more weight than expected. In 1997, anthropologist Kristen Hawkes and colleagues published a study in Current Anthropology based on years among the Hadza of Tanzania, tracking exactly who fed the children and how much they grew because of it. The pattern was specific. While a mother nursed a new baby, her older, already weaned children's weight gain stopped tracking with her foraging hours. It tracked with her own mothers instead. Grandmothers were out digging tubers too tough for small hands to process, feeding grandchildren who weren't theirs to feed by any strict biological requirement. Hawkes built an entire theory out of that pattern, that human women live decades past menopause, unlike almost any other mammal, specifically because a grandmother's labor kept grandchildren alive long enough to reproduce themselves. Longevity, in other words, may itself be a parenting adaptation. Line up the 4 pieces: the teeth, The nursing intervals, the 14 caregivers. The grandmother's digging tubers for someone else's child, and a pattern emerges that has nothing to do with one heroic, self-sacrificing mother. No single parent, however devoted, was ever really doing this alone. The real caregiving unit wasn't a mother and a baby. It was an entire camp, structured, redundant, built so that if one caregiver failed, 3 or 4 others were already reaching for that child. What actually raised a Paleolithic child wasn't a person. It was a system. Go back to that bedroom at 2 a.m, baby asleep on your chest, phone glowing with an app telling you to put her down. For nearly the entire history of your species, an app like that wouldn't have needed to exist, because you would never have been alone in that room in the first place. A grandmother, a sister, an unrelated neighbor would already be reaching for her, already sharing the weight of the 2 hours. Modern parenting didn't get harder because children changed. It got harder because it deleted almost